Hi, Ed. How are you doing today?
Ellie, good to see you, and congratulations on your graduation.
Thank you so much. My name is Elle Milewski, and I am a recent 2020 grad of Penn State's B.F.A in acting program. And today I am here with Ed, who you got your MA in theater from Penn State in 1967. Is that right?
Right, I'm Ed Baierlein. I was an undergraduate at Gettysburg College, and then came to Penn State in 1965 as part of the first class of graduate students.
Wow.
In the theater department at Penn State. I think there were 12 or 13 of us, about a dozen, and graduated. I was a graduate assistant in 1965, and then received Schubert playwriting fellowship and got my MA in 1967.
That's amazing. And what was your time like at Penn State?
Oh, it was very pleasant. I met my wife there, Sally Diamond, who was a fellow graduate student, and we got married in 1967 and went home and typed my thesis.
There you go. And I'm really curious.
Yeah, that was our honeymoon.
That typing your thesis was your honeymoon. Wow, that's a productive honeymoon. Very nice. And yes. Tell me a little bit, you mentioned that you were a Schubert playwriting fellow. What was that? Because we don't have that anymore. I haven't heard of that.
Well, I don't know how long it lasted at Penn State, but at least 2 years, and I don't know who had it after me. The first Schubert fellow was Lou Floromonte, my friend and roommate, best man at my wedding, and Louis had the playwriting fellowship in 1965. And as I said, I had an assistantship, and I think because I had a few plays, one-act plays produced at 5 O'Clock Theater, which was a program of just original scripts.
Yeah,
they gave me the
now.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
They gave me the Schubert in 1967.
Wow.
And so the main difference in the two was that the assistantship paid $1,600 a year. The Schubert paid $2,500 a year. So
not a bad change.
So we lived on that.
That's awesome. And so
how many?
Go ahead.
I was just going to say how many students, graduate students and undergraduates are in the theater department now?
Oh, no. Well, I'm actually, in my class, there's 9 of us who just graduated in the B.F.A in acting program. But the B.F.A in acting is actually only in its 4th year. Right now, I'm the second class of seniors to graduate. So the B.F.A is pretty newly back to Penn State. And the classes tend to be fairly small. We keep it about 12, which is awesome because you get a lot of individual attention, a lot of conservatory type training, which I love.
Sure, that's great.
And so
I think there were about, go ahead.
No, sorry, I was just curious to hear about, because I know the Playhouse opened right when you got there. So where did you do shows when you were here?
It had been open for a year. The first show I did at the Playhouse was called An Album of Günter Grass. That was directed by Dennis Rosa from New York, who also directed Frank Langella's Dracula in New York. Actually, that was the first show I did in the Playhouse. In the Pavilion, I did The Days Between by Robert Anderson, who wrote Tea and Sympathy. And that was directed by Chuck Olson, who came from the Actor Studio Directors Unit. So I was really fortunate in having a couple of really top-notch directors in my first 2 shows at Penn State. I think I did 6 main stage shows in the 2 years that I was there.
Wow. That's awesome. The last show I actually did was an original play I wrote, but we did it at the Pavilion Theater as well. So we've both done our plays in there.
Yeah, the Pavilion was my favorite. It
me
was
too.
Just great.
Yeah, it's such
yeah, it was wonderful. And as I understand it, the final design was done by Kelly Yetton, who was a professor of ours, who was, I think, everybody's favorite teacher at Penn State. We had a bunch of very, very good professors, but Kelly introduced everybody to Michael Chekhov and Viola Spolin and Jerzy Grotowski. And so we were a pretty experimental bunch at the time. And I think our main strength was the bond that we had between us, the 13 of us who were grad students, and also the undergraduates too. But
that's awesome.
We challenged each other a great deal.
Yeah, that's something I experienced as well in my time at Penn State. And so tell me a little bit about what you did after Penn State and starting your own theater company as well. I know that you and your wife have a company in Denver.
Right. For a year, for one summer, we worked with Richard Edelman at Green Mansion Summer Repertory Company in Warrensburg, New York. I was stage manager, and Sally was one of the company. And I was being drafted at the time. So I went into Glens Falls, New York, and had my pre-induction physical, and was, as I said, being drafted. And I hung around for a while trying to get into an officer's program, but couldn't do that. And I didn't want to go in the infantry, so I enlisted in the Air Force. And after basic training, I was sent out to Lowry Air Force Base in Denver, Colorado, where I became a scriptwriter. I wrote instructional films.
That's cool.
For most of my tour of duty. And while I was in the service, we started working at the Changing Scene Theater in Denver, and also then at the Third Eye Theater in Denver in 72, 73, and then started Germinal Stage in 1970, actually incorporated in 73 and started productions in 1974. And so we had 46 seasons altogether in Denver, did about 3,500 performances of 250 different plays. So, or 250 plays. Some plays we did more than once, but.
Yeah. Now I'm really curious because you mentioned how you were drafted, and I know that graduating during the pandemic has been, fairly crazy and unexpected, but it's caused
I bet.
Yeah, and it's caused me to really reflect on not just, where I'm going to go when I graduate and what I'm going to audition for, because all that's been halted. It's caused me to really reflect on, what side of history do I want to be on? Because it's not just the pandemic. We have the Black Lives Matter movement and our issues with systemic racism, all these tumultuous things happening right now. And it's caused me to look deeper in the person that I want to be and how I can live my life fighting for equality and, like I said, being on the right side of history as I step out in the world. And I'm curious, since you graduated during the Vietnam War, how that time affected you and the person that you grew to be.
I think it affected me from the standpoint of just being anxious all the time.
I relate.
I mean, I received deferments like a lot of us did during that period of time to finish my undergraduate work, to go into graduate school, to have a second year of graduate school. I applied for another deferment to try to get a PhD, and that didn't come through. So I was on the hook, and it was a time that was very stressful, being newly married, of course, and I really didn't want to go in the infantry, as I said, so that's why I enlisted in the Air Force. We were all against the war, there was no doubt about it, but being in central Pennsylvania, we were also fairly isolated. It wasn't you never got the idea, there wasn't a lot of protests going on in State College at the time, or in Gettysburg when I was an undergraduate. So it was, I think we were mostly concentrated on our work in theater rather than social activism.
Gotcha. Well, thank you so much, Ed. Unfortunately, we're out of time. I would love to talk to you all day, but I have to pass it along now to Rick Lombardo, who is the current director of the School of Theater at Penn State. And it's interesting because the last show that Penn State did before everything shut down for the pandemic was Angels in America, which Rick directed. And it was amazing. but it was also one of those instances of art imitating life and vice versa, since Angels in America is about a country in the midst of disease and dis-ease. So it was amazing to see that show at that time. And I'm really excited to see how Rick faces this challenging time and, you know, steps up with the School of Theater as far as facing these issues of representation and systemic racism in this really crazy time that's challenging for all of us, but also is opening a lot of opportunities for how we can move forward. So without further ado, Rick Lombardo.
Thanks, Ellie. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our second edition of the Living Room Project. While it didn't come up in their conversation, I'd like to point out that both Ellie and Ed wrote original plays when they were students at Penn State, both of which were produced in the Pavilion Theater, a space they, and I know so many of our graduates, have such a deep fondness for. We created the Living Room Project back in March when we essentially closed down theater in America, both at Penn State and on the stages throughout our nation. We knew that both our current students and our alumni were at home in their living rooms, and we were wanting to find a way to connect them, to share some creative content and some conversation. We also created this program as a way to help raise funds to support current students who might be facing financial need. At the bottom of this page, you'll see a link to the School of Theater Future Fund. If you could make even a small donation, we'll be able to use those funds to support students who, because of the pandemic, might be experiencing some significant economic need in this current time. Besides the pandemic, there's also an important and long overdue conversation going on in America regarding racial justice. And so I'd like to bring on our first interview guest, who is an alumnus and artist who has fully integrated this conversation into her artistic work. Hello, Cynthia. I'd like to welcome you to the Living Room Project. Let me just explain to folks that Cynthia Henderson is a graduate from 1997 of our MFA program in acting. You are also an associate professor, is that right?
No, I'm a full professor now.
You are now a full professor.
Yes.
Don't let me get the rank wrong.
Oh, no, it's okay. The cool part about that, though, is that I'm the first African-American to be promoted to the rank of full professor in the entire history of Ithaca College.
Well, congratulations for that. That's really extraordinary.
Thank you.
You also, besides your work as an actor and a director, I know that you have a real commitment to working for issues of social justice.
Yes.
And in addition to being a Fulbright scholar, you're the founder of an organization called Performing Arts for Social Change. Is that right?
Yes, I am.
Which I think, given the time that we are living in this summer and the demand and the need for increased justice, racial justice, anti-racism, social justice, I was fascinated to learn about this, and I'd love to hear more about the intersection for you in your work as an artist and your work in the social justice arena.
Great. Well, one of the things I do with Performing Arts for Social Change, it started out as sort of this local project that I was doing, and now it's expanded into an international project. I've been to Cameroon as both a Fulbright scholar and in doing the Performing Arts for Social Change. I've been to China, Russia, Ecuador, a lot of different countries doing this work. And kind of our mission is a voice to those who feel that they have no voice using theater. One of the projects I did was an AIDS education through theater, and that became a documentary that was shown in limited audiences in with PBS. And also I did a project working with people who had been dealing with the war with the Boko Haram. So I went into a war zone and did some work with them, trying to help them find their voice and help them figure out how they're going to be working through the aftermaths of this war. Unfortunately, the war is still going on. That also became a short documentary, and that was screened with the Finger Lakes Environmental Film Festival. So a lot of this work is taking what I teach, which is this idea of not just how do you want to entertain your audience or how do you want to make your character more believable, but what are the actionable objectives of your character? What is it that you want them to get the audience to do? So it's not just the other person, but this is a way of giving voice to your characters and inspiring or encouraging the audience to go out and do something proactive. A lot of the plays that I direct have social justice themes around them. And it's really about, that whole idea of holding up a mirror to society, but with that mirror, not just showing society who they are, but inspiring society to go and be its best self. So that's part of the intersection as both a teacher of acting, a director, and of course going out and just doing clear social justice theater.
That's great. So for someone who's been working in this area for quite some time, with the extraordinary moment that we're in this summer, with the entire nation right now, finally trying to confront the history of systemic racism, the history of white supremacy in America, how will this fuel what you imagine you might be doing now moving forward with the world around you changing somewhat?
Yeah, I'm actually in the process of summarizing a series of meetings that I had. Now, this wasn't actually, well, I guess politics is a form of theater, but I have since, I know, right? Since June 1st, I have been having conversations kind of in the format that I do Theater for Social Change in my program. I've been having conversations with police officers, with community organizers, with people in the community, also with the mayor of Ithaca and the district attorney in our area. And we have been coming up with this actionable social contract. And I actually got that idea from Trevor Noah, of all people. I was watching the daily social distancing show, and I guess one day he was just inspired to just talk. And he was talking about how the social contract between police officers for the Black community had been broken. And I started doing some research on this idea of social contract. And one of the things that I found was that it actually had its basis in racism. And so I actually changed it from social contract to social contract 2020 to reflect what's happening now. But everything was pretty vague when people were just sort of talking about it. No one actually had anything concrete or specific. And we're theater, we work in specifics. So I broke it down into what are our expectations of the police officers, especially relating to the Black community? What are expectations of the civilian population in the community? What are our expectations of City Hall? And what are our expectations of the DA? Because in terms of the interpersonal interactions, that's something police officers individually can do, and really seeking allies, active allies within the police department who will de-escalate, who will step forward and say, hey, stop. You really shouldn't be kneeling on this man's neck.
Yeah.
And then, but when it comes to policy, they really have no control over it, which is why I folded in City Hall and the district attorney's office. So what are our expectations when it comes to prosecuting officers that frankly break the law? And how to activate those officers who are good officers, but you're complicit in your silence. So how do we encourage them, break the silence, break that cycle of complicity through silence? And we came up with this social contract, 2020, that as soon as I finish summarizing all of the meetings, it's going to be made public. There are a couple of newspapers that want to publish it here in the Ithaca Finger Lakes area. And there is, the mayor's office has asked me to send them the copy. DA's office wants one, and the chief of police wants one, so that we can start looking at that social contract and coming up with something that can become policy. So though it's not theater, it's the politics of theater that we're playing with.
But it's also, you found a way to use the process of theater, haven't you? The process of how an actor interrogates a role and investigates choices. And how do we then apply that to something that's going on in the real world? That's
literally what I did. Yeah.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
It's the same way I talk to students about, or my actors when I'm directing them, about investigating the character's life. Yeah. So I took those processes and I applied them to a very serious situation. And I do that often with theater. And that's how I've intersected this notion of social justice and theater. And like I said, developed performing arts for social change. And I also teach it now at Ithaca College. They asked me to create a course.
Well, Cynthia, this is really impressive, and thank you for sharing about this and for taking a few minutes with us today. It's been really nice to meet you, meet you this way. Absolutely. And maybe when this pandemic is over, we can figure out a way to do that for real.
That would be quite wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, take care now.
Okay, take care.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
There are a lot of talented graduates out there continuing to create in all different ways. Next, you're going to hear from 5 of them. Jim Hogan and Liam Fennecken, both 2013 graduates. From Gillian Albinski, a 1993 graduate. Nathan Lucrezio from 2009. And from one of our current students going into their senior year, Becca Suskauer. Enjoy.
Hello, this is Jim Hogan, and I am Penn State proud musical theater class of 2013. And this next piece you're about to see includes another Penn Stater in Liam Fennecken, class of 13, who we met at Penn State and became instant best friends and decided we needed to sing together all the time. We were in the Statesman a cappella group at Penn State, which we co-founded, and since then we have remained good friends, and we've started a brand new vocal band called T3, which has received some acclaim online, and we are both actors in our own right. Liam has done tons of national tours, and the same for me. And this next piece is Out There from The Hunchback of Notre Dame, and it includes our 3rd member of the band, Brendan Jacob Smith, and John McGinty, who is an actor friend of mine who happens to be deaf. And the reason we got the inspiration to do this piece is it's kind of a revival of a version of Hunchback that John and I got to do together in the summer of 2016 at Sacramento Music Circus, in which John played Quasimodo and I played the voice of Quasimodo. John did the whole show in ASL and I sang all of his material and read a portion of his lines. It was one of the best theatrical experiences I've ever had. And so we felt it would be fun to kind of revisit the material. And so this version is a 3-part harmony, Out There, along with John performing the piece in ASL. And so we're really grateful to be a part of this. Thank you for having us. We hope you enjoy Out There from The Hunchback of Notre Dame. Thank you. Just to live one day out there, out there among the millers and the weavers and their wives. Through the roofs and gables I can see them. Every day they shout and scold and go about their lives, heedless of the gift it is to be them. If I were in their skin, I treasure every instant out there, living in the sun. Give me one day out
ask is one to hold forever out there. Just one day, then I swear I'll be content with my share. Won't resent, won't despair, old and bent, I won't care. I'll have spent one day out
Hi, I'm Gillian Albinski, class of 1993 in theater arts, and I'm joining you from my living room in Charlotte, North Carolina. I grew up in State College, where I cut my teeth in theater at the Bull Barn Playhouse and the State College Area High School. Since I didn't go away to school, my college experience was pretty different from most because my worlds kept overlapping. My first official class at Penn State was Theater 150 with Doug Maddox, who coincidentally was the father of Mark Maddox, who was at the park with me when I was 5 and I broke my leg. My theatrical makeup class was taught by John Baylis, whose wife June was my director in junior high. Bob Leonard was one of my favorite directors to work with, and in high school I used to hang out with his son Josh at the diner and on the wall after school. I did my first production with the Penn State Thespians when I was only 16 and still a junior in high school. So my transition to college was a little blurry. That said, I took full advantage of being at Penn State for 5 years. Working as a stage manager, a prop master, a scenic designer, a lighting designer, I was building and painting and sewing and working on many different run crews. In addition to theater department main stage productions, I worked on Black Box One acts, MFA projects, student projects, stage crew at Eisenhower Auditorium, and did a number of shows with the Penn State Thespians. Did a semester abroad in Melbourne, Australia, and worked summers at Pennsylvania Center Stage. I said yes to practically every project that came my way. Looking back, I have no idea how I had enough energy for all of that. Although I do have fond memories of sleeping on the couch in the green room, drinking endless cans of Diet Coke from the vending machine, and subsisting on chicken and a biscuit crackers from the creamery that I would grab as I dashed from class to rehearsals. I also remember feeling like I was constantly changing my clothes in those days. I might start the day dressed for class, then change for shop hours, then change into run crew blacks. It was a lucky day if I could find a dressing room unlocked at the Playhouse so I didn't have to change in the ladies' room. On a nostalgic note, I fondly recall some of the best conversations in life happening at the loading dock at TAPS. After Penn State, I bounced around the country doing theater at the Actors Theater of Louisville, the North Carolina Shakespeare Festival, and the La Jolla Playhouse. By then, I had met my husband, Douglas Young, and we've been based in North Carolina ever since. My transition to film happened when the friend of a friend was doing a movie in Charlotte called Eddie with Whoopi Goldberg. That was my first film, and I've been doing it ever since. I now work primarily as a prop master and production designer in film, TV, and commercials. A few highlights include being the prop master for Homeland, Magic Mike XXL, Gifted, Walking Dead, and most recently, one of your favorite quarantine guilty pleasures, Outer Banks. I was slated to do a new series for the Oprah Network, but like so many things these days, it's been postponed by the pandemic. It's hard to know when the entertainment industry will be back at work, but luckily we have things like this to keep us connected as a community. Through the years, I've kept up with the Penn State Theater Department. I love going to the New York reunions, where I can reconnect with friends from college and make new friends with old alumni like Bob Buckler and Jerry James. And when I go back to State College to visit family, I often stop at the theater department and say hello. In 2008, Penn State invited me to speak to a number of tech and design students. Out of that session, I ended up hiring students Annette Vargas and Josh Hackett to work with me on a Napa Auto Parts commercial. Spending time with them on set reminded me of why I love working with people who come from theater. They're collaborative, resourceful, good communicators, and well-rounded, traits that are valuable in any industry. In 2018, Joyce Hoffman, Travis DeCastro, and Jay Lasnik put together an opportunity for me to come in and do a presentation and talkback session for theater students. It was great being back in the Playhouse Theater, seeing all of those young, optimistic students just starting out on their great adventures. I'm eternally grateful for my time at Penn State, where people like Helen Manful, Richard Nichols, Sterling Shelton, Peg French, Travis DeCastro, Carol Brandt, Lee Byron, and so many others had a profound and lasting impact on my life and my career, either through what they taught me in class, the advice they gave me, or the lessons I learned through them. I hope every student gets as much out of their time at Penn State as I did. And even though we are apart right now, each in our own living rooms, I'm grateful that Penn State continues to bring us together.
Hey everyone, my name is Nathan Lucrezio. I graduated from Penn State University in 2009. I've been in New York City for the past 10 years, and I'm currently in the Broadway show, Diana, a New Musical. So much fun. I hope you guys come and see it when we open Broadway back up. So what have I been doing in this time of quarantine? I've been keeping myself creative with cooking, with doing a lot of dancing, a lot of home videos, and one of the video that I'm gonna share with you right now is an idea that I had for International Dance Day, where I wanted to put together all of the fun dances that I knew from the shows that I've done and put them together in a minute. And yeah, so I hope you enjoy it and that you guys continue to stay creative and positive during this time. See you later.
I'm Becca Suskauer. I'm a rising senior in the musical theater program at Penn State, and I'm from Palm Beach Gardens, Florida, where I'm currently spending my quarantine. So it's no secret that these times are hard, and it's important to find things that bring us joy every day. Some things for me include playing with my beautiful border collie dog, Tucker, and FaceTiming and catching up with my school friends who I miss so much. The song I'll be singing is Take Me to the World by Stephen Sondheim. The lyrics in this song have become a guiding light for me in times that, as an artist, have become incredibly hard to navigate most of the time. So I'd like to share these lyrics with you, and I hope you enjoy Take Me to the World. Let me see the world with the clouds. Take me to the world, out where I can push through crowds. Take me to the world, a world that smiles with streets instead of aisles, where I can walk for miles with you. Take me to the world that's real. Show me how it's done. Teach me how to laugh, to feel, move me to the sun. Just hold my hand whenever we arrive. Take me to the world where I can be alive. Let me see the world that smiles. Take me to the world, somewhere I can walk for miles. Take me to the world.
Thanks, everyone. That was a really inspiring segment, and it's great to see the creativity and the imagination and ideas that have been bubbling up in the midst of this crisis, which has affected all of us so deeply. Also, it's wonderful seeing alumni and a current student interacting together. Next, we're going to move to an interview with one of our alums who's a 1973 graduate. She works in the business and management side of our industry, the side that, of course, hires most of our students. So please welcome agent manager Adrienne Crane-Ross. You're 1973 BA graduate, is that correct, Adrienne?
Correct. Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about Penn State School of Theater in 1973.
It was a busy place, I'll tell you that. It was great. The professors we had, the head of the theater arts curriculum, they were just amazing. We did so much. It was truly a practicum education. We worked nonstop, day and night, and learned so much. It was brilliant. It was a brilliant education. And fun place, I'll tell you, fun place.
So after graduation, what was your next step? How do you get from there to being an agent in LA? What happened in between?
Okay, so I was a producer, and I started out as a stage manager for an equity company that toured family entertainment around the country. Eventually worked my way up from there to become the producer, worked there for a very long time. It became an international company. It was a 3-truck bus and truck tour. It was big, big shows that as the industry changed and and Disney came into the industry and things like that, it certainly came down, but we produced all the children's and family entertainment from Madison Square Garden and many facilities around the country, as well as our own bus and trucks.
And were you based out of New York at that point, or were you already on the West Coast?
Nope, Philadelphia.
Philadelphia.
Born and raised in Philadelphia. Philadelphia. We had a New York office, but stay closer to home whenever I could. Then I, at the same time, I was with Radio City and MSG, and we did the Christmas Carol for Madison Square Garden for a very long time, with plans to take that on the road that didn't come to fruition, but mostly producing. I still produce for PBS television. I produce concerts, but I left that part of the business quite a while ago and went with the management company that was managing our shows internationally. And just things had changed. The industry had changed drastically. Radio City was being sold again. Our shows were not, at that point, I didn't have full control. I was CEO, but I didn't have full control. There was a board of directors. And our shows were coming, Our shows were coming from 3 trucks to 2 trucks, 2 trucks to 1 truck, and it just wasn't the quality of what I was happy doing. And I had this wonderful offer to go into management of other theatricals that were touring the world, and I did that. And I've been with that company now for 26 years.
Great.
We're agent managers. So we mostly are agents representing live entertainment, live on stage around the world. Mostly now in the United States, I have to tell you, because all my shows around the world have been canceled because we're Americans. But we mostly are agents, and secondarily we're managers.
Well, then that leads to my second question, which sort of has 2 parts. If you could give us an idea, perhaps, of some of the shows or artists that you currently were representing, and then what happened back in March to your business and to all of your artists, when basically we know the American theater live entertainment just one night just stopped. We hit the switch, right?
Right. It's not just here, everywhere. One of the shows I've managed for 20 some years, and I've also the agent for, is Forever Tango. It's been on Broadway a few times, and it travels extensively. It's 25 years old and has never gone off the road. And we had Italy, Greece, Belgium, major tour for come for this past spring, May. And I got a phone call probably the last day of February telling me that every market was closed. And then found out that we still had our Taiwanese market. We found out, which was for a month, so it was worth going. We found out that Argentina was closing its borders and would not let anybody out. And if they left, they couldn't come back.
Wow.
So that was a major tour that was canceled. We work with a lot of artists. I represent Frankie Avalon. I mean, it's really across the board. We represent a tribute band that Mick Fleetwood put together. It's basically a tribute to Fleetwood Mac.
To himself.
And he does all the advertising, he does all the promotion, he does everything for the show, and it is excellent. But we always say it's a tribute to Mick Fleetwood by Mick Fleetwood, but he's a great man, great guy. And so we represent a real variety. We represent PBS show Steve Trash for family audiences. He's an illusionist that talks about reuse, recycle, and it's just a great show that now is going virtually. Several of our shows are now available virtually. Forever Tango just put together a piece that they had done with the Boston Pops. We do a lot of symphony shows. They had put together a piece with the Boston Pops and the Israeli Phil, and it was available on DirecTV probably 7 years ago, and now that's available virtually for the venues. Because and there's no charge for that for the venues. And the reason is we have to continue to connect to our audiences to keep artists vital and current and in everybody's eyesight, or this whole industry will cease to be.
What I think has been lost in the American conversation right now around the impact of the pandemic is that I think our media, our politicians, very rarely, if ever, talk about the impact on the performing arts. And we have so many artists right now who have been unemployed and who have no prospects of employment. Right now, from where you sit, and this will be my last question, what are you all projecting out right now as the possibility of when venues may begin booking again?
There are a few venues that are booking now, and but they're trying to do local entertainment because in many cases, even if the shows could still perform, the artists are not eager to get on airplanes and travel. They're certainly not eager to get on a tour bus and travel. So there are shows that are booking now. I would say, though, that for our extended tours, we're talking March of 2021 at the earliest. I would say that for our shows where we have an artist in the city in Manhattan, we represent a lot of the original Motown artists. For a show that's within driving distance of Manhattan, once they feel safe, they'll go. But they usually do one-offs anyway. They usually do individual nights anyway because they don't choose to be on the road for multiple nights. I would say that for those types of shows, we're hoping, based on regions opening up, that we may be back on the road February.
That your date of March 2021 is one that I hear a lot.
Yes.
I think that's one that's circulating a lot within the Broadway community as a possibility. And that's, I think, still optimistic. Certain things have to fall into place by then. Probably one of them is either a vaccine or a really great therapeutic that's commonly available, right?
Exactly. I know that Oregon State, Washington State, they have just issued mandates that nothing will be presented in the theaters until there is a vaccine.
Yeah, we've shut down. We're not planning. We have no live performance right now planned in the immediate future. I can't find a way to do that with any sense of ethics and safety for either the performers, the backstage crew, the technicians, the audience. It's all too complicated, and everything is as we know, backstage is a very, very tight, cramped place usually.
I think, yeah, and it's a fiscal issue as well because I am the buyer for a lot of venues around the country. I've been doing this so long, and I know the different acts. So I often will take over an entire venue because the staffs have been cut so drastically in many of these venues.
Yeah.
There's too much for the executive director to do as well as run the venue. So for an example, I have an arena in Washington State that I do all the buying for. It's 3,400 seats. Before they issued the mandate that we could not open until there's a vaccine, they had issued a mandate that we could go in at 20% capacity. You can't afford a $100,000 show, a $50,000 show at 20. Even they talk about maybe they'd make it 33%. I mean, it's for a show. There's no way to pay anybody.
I know. Well, let's hope the miracle happens. And
I'm waiting. I'm ready.
And we can get our field and our friends back employed again, which is what we all need.
I've been doing this 46 years, and I guarantee you we will be back.
Okay, I'm going to let that be the final word then, Adrienne. Thanks so much. It was a pleasure to talk to you. Thanks for joining us for the Living Room Project.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye. Hello. I have the pleasure now of speaking with my colleague and good friend, Steve Broadnax III. Steve has the distinction of not only being an alumnus of Penn State School of Theater, but also, of course, right now is a professor of theater, teaching acting. So hello, Steve, welcome.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Oh, of course. So talk a little bit about what that is like for you, being a graduate of the program, and now you've been teaching in the school for so long. What's that experience been?
Yeah, I've been at Penn State as a professor for 16 years, and then I did my graduate study. So that's 16, 19, almost 20 years coming up, being associated with Penn State University. I went as an MFA again, and my acting I got from Penn State. Spent a little time in New York, taught at another university. I'm originally from Little Rock, Arkansas, the University of Arkansas Pine Bluff, which is a UAPB, and then got invited back to teach at Penn State, and I've been here ever since. So it's been awesome, and a journey to go from a student then to a professor of theater at Penn State. Has been interesting, has been fulfilling. I've gotten great opportunities, and I owe a lot to Penn State for my education and my worldview of American theater. So I owe a lot to Penn State University.
Well, speaking of worldview, you're having an extraordinary moment right now in terms of your directing career outside of Penn State. Yeah. And you have a play scheduled for Broadway when it reopens, right?
Yes. It's a play by Keenan Scott II. It's called Thoughts of a Colored Man. It had an off-Broadway run last year at Syracuse Stage and Baltimore Center Stage, and it's scheduled to have its Broadway debut when we get back to some sense of normalcy where we can all gather together in a theater. So yeah, that's the next big thing on my plate.
Well, good. Well, since we can't all gather together in theaters right now, we've been doing projects this summer, right? In Penn State Center Stage Virtual, and creating content, different kinds of media content online. And you wrote and directed 2020 Vision, which was our third Penn State Center Stage full production. Could you tell us a little bit about that project and what inspired you to write it?
And initially, it was commissioned from the People's Light Theater in Malvern, Pennsylvania, which is right outside of Philly. It was a commission. They just got in contact with me and said, hey, we want to offer a platform for your response of the Black Lives Matters movement and what had just happened with the murder of George Floyd. So we were in the middle of everything, COVID and the protests and the march, and they just gave me a space to just creatively have a response. And then I came to you, Rick, and Penn State. I thought that they could collaborate together on this project for the Living Room Project and their Always On project. So I thought, being in Pennsylvania, the two professional entities could collaborate. And both of you all said yes. Both artistic directors said yes. And so then but I wrote it inspired for the Black Lives Matter movement, and it was my response to what was going on.
It's an incredibly powerful and moving piece, Steve. And of course, right on the pulse of our moment right now, our moment where we're working towards urgently racial justice and racial equity.
Yes.
It was a challenging project to pull together, though, wasn't it? Because Eric Robinson, another one of our graduates who is the actor in the piece, sort of had to do his own shoot, right? Because it's sort of theater, but it's sort of a movie. Yeah. And Eric had to shoot his own video. So tell us a little bit about what it was like directing that, thousands of miles away from where the actor was.
Exactly. And what's funny about it is that, okay, I knew it would be on this platform, visually platform. I said, what can we do that I could do with a camera phone, basically, and with another actor in another state? And Eric Robinson Jr. is one of our MFA graduates. So, and Umkar, whom also did the editing, is another Penn State student. But with those guys, I knew it would have to be remote, I guess. And so actually he shot it in DC. He is in DC when he shot that.
Oh, I didn't know that. I thought he was in Texas.
No, he had a job that actually traveled from schools to school, he worked for a company that took, were moving students who didn't get an opportunity to move their dorm furniture out of the dorm room. He works for a company that travels to different schools in the nation and moves their furniture.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Packs it up and sends it to the student. So this day, so he shot it like 4 times. So we would get on the phone. We had like a rehearsal or 2 on Zoom, and we would just, do table work on Zoom, and I would give him notes. Then you're right, he went away himself. I told him what I wanted, and he just would record it and send me different takes. So like he did like 4 takes, and each take was from a different city. The take we actually kept was the one from DC. He was in downtown DC when he shot that footage. So
that's actually really resonant, isn't it?
I know. I made that up. I was like, wow, that's the one we took. And
so is it one long take? Because it's really hard to tell in the editing. Is it pieced together? Because it seems like it's seamlessly one long take.
It's 2 takes. So the first half, and then when he got out the car and it kind of cut to the protest footage of dancing, that's that. And then when he got back in the car, that's the second take. So it's done in 2 takes.
So talk a little bit about, in the writing of it, there's some, I guess I could call them Easter eggs. There's some really subtle metaphors and really subtle historical references that are buried in the piece that people might not initially see. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, and I'm going to give shots out to Kikora Franklin and Wendell Franklin. So when I first wrote my first draft, actually, I let them, which are both colleagues of ours at Penn State, I let them read my first draft. And Kikora kind of made the connection. She said, Steve, this is a contemporary Nat Turner. And that wasn't my thinking initially. And I said, oh my God, it is a contemporary Nat Turner story, a contemporary hero of resistance. So then I went back and just made a few little tweaks to really align itself with the history of Nat Turner, which Nat Turner was known for having the only successful sustained slave rebellion. And so my question was, when I wrote it, is what happens when, as humans, all humans, I was also studying Maslow's physiological hierarchy of needs, and what happens to any a species, human beings, when your needs are not met. And for him, it was safety and security of being a Black man, and brutality that he saw witnessed with George Floyd, brutality from the police. So just what happens when your basic need is taken away? Any human being will try to fulfill, or for safety and security, supply their basic need. So that was like the premise of the thing, but to in line with Nat Turner, a contemporary hero of resistance.
Yeah, it's really a beautiful piece, Steve, and incredibly powerful. Where this site is streaming, where right now, folks, where you're watching the Living Room Project, you're also going to find a link where you're going to be able to see 20/20 Vision. It's 34 minutes, I believe, ish. And it'll be some of the best 34 minutes that you're going to spend this week with a really powerful piece of art. With an incredible performance by Eric Robinson Jr.
Yes.
So Steve, thanks so much for joining us for the Living Room Project, and folks, check out 20/20 Vision.
Yes, please. Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye. Before we end this second edition of the Living Room Project, I would like to thank everyone who participated in this episode. I'd especially like to thank Allison Lee, who produced this, and Chris Swetsky, who is our technical director behind the scenes. Please remember that we do this as a way to raise funds for the School of Theater Future Fund, and the link is on this page down below. So please, even a small donation could help us support students in financial need in this coming year. Now, before we end, we have a few more thoughts from tonight's participants.
Hi.
My favorite memory of my time at Penn State was returning to Penn State. And what I mean by that is I took a gap year after my freshman year to join the National Tour of Spring Awakening. And during your freshman year, you enter a class of people who are coming from all across the country, specifically in musical theater for me. And it's a very small, tight-knit community. There were 12 people in my class. We became best friends instantly. And then leaving for an entire year and coming back to a new class, a year below that, I was terrified. I didn't really know anyone particularly well, and I was really scared to re-enter the program. And I was amazed to see that everyone just opened me with welcome arms as if I had never really left. And it is something that I obviously still carry with me right now, and I'll never forget it. So that's my favorite memory.
Our class singing the Eagles' Get Over It to Manuel Duque on our final class day just prior to graduating was one of the dearest memories I will carry with me forever from my time at Penn State, because Manuel was both laughing and he was tearing up, and it was just truly like a heart moment. Also, my son, because I was a single mom while I was going through Penn State, my son and I climbing trees all over campus, and there was one favorite tree on the quad that we would climb all the time, and we carved our names in it along with all the other names that were carved in it. And a few years ago, we went back to visit, and we climbed the tree to look for our name. And of course, the name is way high up now because it's been a hot minute. But, oh God, there's so many beautiful memories, but those are two that just stand out and just stay right here in my heart.
I have two favorite memories. The first one is when my class in our senior year got to go to Asia. We went to China, Japan, South Korea, and Taiwan. It was the trip of a lifetime. I was fortunate enough to go to the Great Wall of China, and our class got to sing Stand By Me. That was our senior song, and we were recording it and taking pictures. And then I also brought my Irish dance shoes, and I was able to Irish dance on the Great Wall of China, which is like, what? Has anybody ever done that? I'm sure they have. But it was really, really fun. And then the second memory is I got to originate the role of Warren in Ordinary Days, which is Adam Miwan's musical. And it was incredible. We got to take that show, which we worked on at Penn State, and take it to the York Theater in New York City as a part of the New Musicals Festival that they had at that time. And I'll never forget it. He gave me a voice into something that I thought I would never have a voice in.
I have a quick two favorite memories so far at Penn State. My first was my first day of freshman year. I sat with my entire class in the musical theater program in my class called Class Voice, and heard every student sing for the first time, and it was breathtaking. I got to do something very similar earlier this year, in the beginning of the semester, where through the musical theater, New Musical Theater Initiative by John Simpkins, we had our two musical writers for our senior class commission come and watch us share all different pieces that kind of showed how much our work has evolved over the past few years, and it was really incredible.
My favorite memory was my semester abroad in London. It was just such an amazing adventure to get to go on with my class, and getting to study theater in London with so much theater just kind of right outside our front door was really, really amazing. And then also just personally having that amount of independence, living across the ocean. I really grew up a lot as a person and got a lot of experience in travel and just kind of taking care of myself, living in a city. And also little Ellie got to live out her dream of seeing Loch Ness, because I have always been obsessed with the Loch Ness Monster.
I have two memories. One is the couple of years that I spent stage managing the new works at the Pavilion and getting to work so closely with all those creative people, those brilliant writers and actors. And as a tech person, that was an amazing experience. I really got to be involved. My other memory was when I came back over a Christmas break one year as stage manager, and we did a show called The Second Shepherd's Play in the Playhouse. And we had a lamb that we got from the farm, and that was it. That was the baby in the play. And when we started, I could hold this beautiful little lamb in my hands. And by the time we did the show, the lamb stood up on all fours to my waist. I kept it in my dorm room at night, and I spent all my time during the show chasing it across the stage with a dustpan to pick up the poopies. Those are my memories.
I would say a faculty member there too that made a particular impression on me. The first one was Manuel Duque. He changed how I envisioned the art of acting forever. I found my authentic self in his studio. And Charles Dumas was my cultural and professional guiding force. He taught me what it meant to be both a professional as well as an artist who is socially aware. And that, both of those things have been guides in my career in such a wonderful and proactive way. I actually reference Manuel in one of my books.
A faculty member that made a specific impact on me is Gwen Walker, who is my voice teacher, is going to be my voice teacher next year, and hopefully for a very long time. She is a very, very special lady. There's a million things I could say about her, but what I really appreciated about when I joined her studio was that she saw me as a complete individual, as separate from my sister, who also went through the musical theater program and made a very specific impact and is doing so well. She really allowed me to come into my own and be my own person, and kind of defy the odds in that way. And I just love the safe space that she's created for me, and she has encouraged me to be so many things that I never thought I could be, never thought I could step into, vocally and character-wise in terms of who I've played at school. And I'm so thankful for her. So thankful.
I always have to say that there were so many. I was so lucky to go through Penn State at a time when there were so many professionals who had brilliant teaching skills, in addition to their knowledge of the industry, that had come up from New York to teach at Penn State in the early 70s. I was so lucky. I would say Helen Manful, who helped me to grow in so many ways. She brought out the best in me. She believed in me. She challenged me, and she gave me more opportunities than any student could have ever dreamed of. And the other one would be Del Bortz, who I'm sure none of you know, who was a sound person, okay, who was a sound specialist, and a passion for sound that after Penn State I went on and got my master's in acoustical engineering and sound design for the theaters. And he was just a very patient, quiet, wonderful man that shared all of his knowledge with me, and I will be always grateful for that as well.
It is impossible for me to pick one faculty member, so I'm going to do three, and I'm going to do it fast. One for each concentration in musical theater. I'm going to go vocals for Raymond Sage, my teacher, who taught me a way of singing that I never, ever could have imagined possible. For acting, I'm going to say Jim Wise, because he just was the only person who could ever communicate to me the way to get out of my own way when approaching a piece of text. And for dance, Michelle Dunleavy, I know that I am still a god-awful dancer, but back in the day, she would take at least an hour of her own time extra outside of class to try to help me figure out jazz and tap and all this stuff that was so foreign to me. And I'm so grateful to all three of them for that.
Number one was Kelly Yetton, who had been around forever. Kelly was a genius and an expert on arena staging. And he taught graduate seminars, and there were about 7 of us. And he taught us to think outside the box as directors. And number 2 would be Lowell Manful, who taught me organization and how to analyze scripts. And Lowell and Helen were very good friends of mine as well.
The person who keeps popping back into my head is actually Carol Brandt, who was the head of the department. First, because she was a woman and the head of the department, left an impression. But there was a particular situation where I had gotten a grade that I didn't think I deserved, and went to her to try to argue to let me take the class again or have it expunged from my record or something. I didn't want my GPA to be affected. And the way she talked to me about how this was a moment in time, this would pass, I had to deal with the consequences, which of course there weren't any really, but I didn't know that at the time. And it just, at that moment, was an epiphany for me of, okay, decisions have consequences, but they aren't the end of the world. And it's one of those things that you try to teach people, but you can't. You have to feel it. And somehow in her office that day, I felt it.
A teacher that had a huge impact on me was Susan Russell, and she taught a sophomore studio class. I think my class was the first class that she taught, or the second. It was very early on. And I'll never forget our first meeting with her. She was like, "You guys, we signed a contract before you even came here, and here we are now." She would refer to us as like demigods and all these terms to sort of heighten our reality in the room. We would do this technique called phenomenology, where we would stand in a circle and we would all have to move at the same time. We'd have to change direction at the same time. We were doing things that I never thought was a part of acting, but it made so much sense. She would have us write journals, she would have us perform our songs, but she wouldn't have us just stand there and sing it and then give us acting notes. It was like, you were going to fight for that song, whatever that song meant. We would do exercises within it. I think I was on the floor one time singing Something's Coming from West Side Story, and it was a breakthrough moment for me. And she leaned down and she went, "Happy birthday." So like little like moments like that. She was just so wonderfully intense. And we've stayed connected to this day. As a class, that was a change. That was a changing moment within our class, relationship-wise and within the program. So, Susan Russell, love you.
For me, Wendell and Kokora Franklin changed my life. They supported me so much as a person, just growing up through college, as an actor, and also as a playwright, because Penn State's really where I discovered I wanted to pursue writing. And Wendell Franklin encouraged me so much. He would let me come to him outside of class all the time with new drafts of plays. He encouraged me to share my writing and pursue it. So I will forever feel so grateful for both of them. And they really are such inspiring artists as well. Getting to watch them work is incredibly inspiring. And they're also just genuinely some of the kindest, just best people I've ever met in my life. So to this day, and I know throughout my whole future, they will always be inspiration.
What I brought with me into the real world from Penn State was a work ethic. They worked us hard. They made us do practicum after practicum after practicum, and it was all worth it. We were taught that this is a business and that you have to work your job. It wouldn't matter what that is. If you've got a job, work it and do it right. And that's what I brought with me into the world.
What I brought with me into the world, I wasn't the most, let's say, popular or like was cast in all of the shows at my time at Penn State. I had to work very hard on my acting. I was not as strong of an actor as I am now. And I knew that with perseverance, I would eventually end up where I needed to be, but I could get really angry at certain things, be like, oh, I'm not casting that because of X, Y, and Z, or I'm not casting that because I'm doing this show, or all of these excuses. And really, at the end of the day, it comes down to the work. And I feel like 10 years after being in college, it still comes down to the work. Even in the time of social media and people being famous, it's, are you good at what you do? And I'm never going to take for granted. There's times that I want to go back and redo some classes, or, oh, wait, I should have paid attention there, because I could have learned so much more if I had more of an open mind. But with that said, I definitely take all of what I've learned at that time, all of what I've learned auditioning in the city, and it's more clear to me now that perseverance and going to those auditions and never just sitting at home because you feel bad about yourself, always showing up is really what's going to get you the job. You're going to get, 99 no's and then 1 yes. And when I eventually joined Cinderella and met you, Allison, I was like, oh my gosh, a fellow Penn Stater. Here's the network, here's the work actually coming full circle.
Yeah, and I can piggyback right off that my thing that I carry with me and from Penn State is this amazing sense of community. Nothing gives me more pleasure or more just joy than meeting another Penn Stater for the first time. There's such a connection there, especially within the School of Theater, but across the school in general. We were explaining before the show started that I was a senior in high school when I was visiting Penn State, and to see if I wanted to attend. And I happened to be there on the taping of Spotlight in 2009. And I will never forget seeing Nathan Lucrezio right there up on stage performing his face off in this Irish dance number when he's singing and he's dancing and it's all this. And I was like, wow, that's something that I can be, something that I can do by going here. It was, and it's those amazing experiences, but I had never met Nathan before right now. And now, it's just some of the coolest things, and I carry it with me constantly. The networking and the community that Penn State has given me is the greatest.
Well, my graduate assistantship for my first year was, I would do tech. I was responsible for tech for acting classes in the Playhouse. And I knew nothing about lighting or design. And so in that year, I learned an awful lot from Del Bort, from Bill Allison, from Chuck Furman, about all of those things. And it made me much better qualified to run my own theater, because I also did a lot of design and designed lights and sets too. From an acting standpoint, again, from Kelly Etten, I learned to respect Viola Spolin, and all this was fairly new at the time. And also Michael Chekhov and psychological gesture. And when I was introduced to psychological gesture, I said, oh, I don't work that way. And it took me probably about another 5 years before I reinvestigated Michael Chekhov and found out that not only did I work that way, but that everybody ought to work that way.
I would say that something that's brought me throughout my career is it's a philosophy. And it started when Manuel was interviewing me, actually. We actually didn't talk about acting. We talked about Taoism. And when I came into the school, one of the things that really started hitting me in everything that we did, especially my work with Manuel, was that the art is bigger than we are. And that it's not about us, it's about the moment in the art. It's not about you. It's always about the other. It's always about the other person. It's about the audience. It's about society. It's about everything that comes, that ripples out beyond us. And that's taken me through everything I've done, every performance I've done. The books I'm writing, the classes I teach, the social justice work I do all over the world. It's one of the reasons I started doing performing arts for social change. And so that particular philosophy has been a part of everything that I've done. It's not about you. it's bigger than you, the art.
Pavilion.
Playhouse.
Pavilion.
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 Playhouse.
Pavilion.
Pavilion.
Penn State.